The night was suffocating in its silence. The air was thick with the weight of a storm, though the clouds overhead seemed to part just enough for a pale, sickly moon to cast its ghostly light over the desolate landscape. I stood in the cemetery, my feet sinking into the wet earth, feeling the chill of the graveyard seep into my bones. I had never believed in the supernatural, nor had I ever been one to indulge in the superstitions that plagued this town. But there was something about the stories surrounding this particular burial ground that had always intrigued me. Stories of a curse, of evil, of something far darker than any human mind could comprehend. They called it the cursed grave of the devil's child. The tale went that centuries ago, a child was born to a woman named Alina. She was young, beautiful, and married to a man with a dark past. Unbeknownst to Alina, her husband was a man who had made a pact with the devil, a pact that bound his soul in exchange for wealth, power, and influence. But there was one condition. The child born to their union would not be human. It would be the offspring of Satan himself, a creature whose birth would mark the beginning of an era of darkness. Alina had no idea. She was simply in love with her husband, a man she thought was good. That was until the child was born. The child came into the world screaming, its eyes black as coal, its skin pale as death. It had no soul. It had no warmth. It was a hollow vessel, an abomination of nature. And as it grew, its actions grew darker still. People in the village started to disappear. Livestock were found mutilated. Fires would erupt in the dead of night, leaving behind nothing but ash and charred remains. The town was plunged into fear, and whispers of the child's evil deeds spread like wildfire. When Alina finally realized what she had brought into the world, it was too late. Her husband had disappeared, as if swallowed by the very pact he had made. She was left alone with the devil's offspring, a creature that demanded blood, death, and suffering. And so Alina did what she believed was the only thing left to do. She took her child to the cemetery, to the very place where the cursed souls of the village were buried, and she buried him deep beneath the earth. But even in death, the child's evil lingered, festering like an open wound, waiting for the day it could return to the surface. I had heard the story countless times growing up. It was the talk of every gathering, every whispered conversation, every fearful glance. But as an adult, I found it laughable. Superstitions, I thought. Nothing more than old wives' tales. Yet here I was, standing in the heart of the graveyard, the wind howling through the skeletal trees. I had heard rumors of a strange occurrence that had happened in the village recently. A string of bizarre disappearances that no one could explain. Whispers in the night about a child's laughter echoing in the streets, followed by screams. And then there were the reports of strange markings found in the dirt around the old cemetery, marks that resembled something far more sinister than anything natural. Curiosity had led me here, and now I stood staring at the ancient, cracked gravestone that marked the resting place of Alina's child. The earth around it was disturbed, the ground fresh, as if something had been recently unearthed. I knelt down, my hand brushing against the cold stone. As I did, I heard it, a faint whisper, barely audible but unmistakable. "Help me!" I froze. The whisper seemed to come from all around me, as if the air itself was speaking. I stood up, my heart pounding in my chest. The whispers grew louder, more urgent. "Help me! Set me free!" I stumbled backward, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The ground beneath my feet trembled. And then, from the depths of the grave, something began to stir. At first, it was just a slight movement, something subtle like a shift in the dirt. But soon the earth began to break apart, chunks of soil and stone being flung into the air. I watched in horror as the grave's contents began to rise, a figure emerging from the dark abyss. It was a child, no older than 10, but its eyes were black as night, its skin pale and lifeless. Its face twisted in a grotesque grin, and its mouth opened in a low, guttural laugh. I wanted to run. My instincts screamed at me to flee, but I couldn't move. The child, no, the thing that had once been a child, stared at me, its hollow eyes boring into my soul. You've come to set me free, it whispered, its voice as cold as the grave itself. I tried to speak, but no words came out. It took a step toward me, and with each step, the world around me seemed to distort. The trees twisted, their branches clawing at the sky. The ground beneath my feet seemed to warp, as if the very fabric of reality was tearing itself apart. The thing grinned wider. You don't understand, it hissed. You cannot escape. You cannot run. I am the devil's child, and I will never be free until I have taken you with me. The wind picked up, howling through the graveyard like the wail of 1,000 souls in torment. I could feel the darkness closing in around me, the air thick with an oppressive weight. It was as though the very land itself had become alive, feeding off the malevolent energy of the creature before me. Suddenly it lunged at me, its fingers sharp as claws, its mouth opening wide to devour me whole. I stumbled backward, but before I could escape, something caught my ankle, pulling me down to the earth. I tried to scream, but no sound escaped my lips. The child's laughter echoed in my mind, filling every crevice of my consciousness. And then I saw it, the source of its power. Beneath the surface of the graveyard, a swirling darkness churned, like a whirlpool of evil, pulling everything into its depths. The child was just a vessel, a mere manifestation of the curse that had been placed on this land. It was the embodiment of the devil's promise, and it would never be satisfied until it claimed another soul. I struggled against the grip of the earth, my hands clawing at the soil, but it was useless. The darkness was too powerful. It consumed me, pulling me deeper and deeper into its cold embrace. The child's laughter faded as I was swallowed whole, my body sinking into the void. And as the darkness closed in around me, I understood the terrible truth. The Satan's offspring was not just a creature born of flesh and blood. It was a curse, one that could never be undone, never be escaped. And as long as it existed, so too would the darkness that followed it, seeking to claim anyone foolish enough to cross its path. When the villagers found my body the next day, there was no sign of struggle, no marks, no wounds, just a single pale handprint on the soil near the cursed grave. And the whispers, they continued. Help me! The Satan's offspring was still waiting,